Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Syukur Alhamdulillah kehadrat Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala yang telah mengizinkan Yayasan IMPAK dan Yayasan Sultanah Bahiyah dibantu oleh Majlis Guru-Guru Cemerlang Negeri Kedah untuk melancar program intervensi SPM 2021. Saya mengucapkan setinggi-tinggi tahniah dan terima kasih kepada guru-guru cemerlang yang telah menyediakan bahan-bahan untuk dikongsikan kepada pelajar-pelajar. Mereka dan saya juga yakin bahawa jika pelajar betul-betul mengikuti siaran ini, mereka akan dapat maklumat yang akan memudahkan mereka menjawab soalan kertas SPM nanti. Kita semua sesungguhnya bergabung tenaga dan usaha untuk membangunkan pelajar agar tidak hanyut dalam gemelut kemunduran. Jangan bergantung kepada takdir semata-mata. Bangunlah anak-anak bangsa Malaysia. Ada tugas besar menanti anda. Masa hadapan mencabar. Kita perlukan pemimpin-pemimpin muda yang berilmu, yang berwibawa. Kemajuan negara tanggungjawab kita bersama. Kita mesti jadi tokoh yang disegani di tanah air dan di pesada antarabangsa. Belajarlah bersungguh-sungguh kerana ilmu adalah kunci kejayaan masa depan anda semua. Wahai pelajar, guru hanya boleh mengajar dan membimbing anda sehingga tamat masa pembelajaran. Yang nak buat pilihan, nak berjaya atau tidak adalah pilihan anda diri sendiri. Jadi jangan anai diri sendiri. Ikutilah program intervensi yang disediakan khusus untuk anda. Akhir kata, saya berdoa agar Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala memberi keteguhan iman, kekuatan minda untuk mengharungi liku-liku perjalanan dan mengurniakan kejayaan kepada anda semua dalam apa jua bidang yang dirempuhi. Sekian, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, good morning. How is everyone doing? I truly hope all of you are doing well at home. And today I am truly honored to be invited by IMPAK to be sharing with you some tips and tricks that I have used with my students, which I found to be effective to help my students prepare for their speaking test. Okay, before I continue, can all of you please write in the comments whether you can hear my voice clearly or not? Please write down in the comment whether you can hear me clearly or not. Okay, great. Thank you, Ira. All right, now let's look at part one. Okay, part one. Now, in part one, what will happen is the interlocutor will ask you a question and you will reply to the interlocutor. Now, you don't have, at this point of the test, you don't have to talk to your partner at all. Now, it will take about 2 minutes tops. Okay. The purpose of this part of the test is to help you relax in the test so that you can start with some nice, easy questions. So, don't worry. Don't worry if you get off to a bad start because a lot of candidates start badly because they are too nervous. Okay. However, there are ways on how you can prepare for this part of the test so that you will be less nervous and you will get off to a good start instead. Okay, now let's look at next slide. All right, now the common topics that will be asked in this part are related to your hobbies, your school, things that you like, things that you don't like, your friends and families, and etc. Now, in the modules that I've shared in Moodle, you'll be able to see a list of possible topics, um, questions, for you to prompt you and your friends so that you can practice with each other, get yourself talking about these topics. Okay, by having enough practice, I'm sure that you will learn vocabulary related to these topics. Okay, now let's continue. Okay, now, tip number two. Okay, you can use the vocab or tense in the questions because I noticed that some students make this common mistakes. For example, I ask my students, "Do you enjoy cooking, Ali?" Yes, I enjoy to cook. Okay, so why don't you use the grammar in the questions and put it in your answer? So you need to listen to the questions carefully. For example, I asked Ali, Ali, do you enjoy cooking? Yes, I enjoy cooking very much. Okay, here's another example. I asked Abu, Abu, are you going for a holiday this year? Yes, I'm going for a holiday in Sabah. So what you can do is use the grammar pattern in the questions and put it in your answer. Now, you don't always have to do this actually because English is quite flexible. But for now, I think this method help my students to avoid making too many mistakes. Okay? Now let's look at another example. What do you usually do on weekends and weekdays? On weekends, sorry, what do you normally do on weekends and weekdays? On weekends, I usually doing homework, and on weekdays, I usually doing play with my friends, for example. Okay, so now, what you can do is on weekdays, I usually do my homeworks, and on weekends, I usually play with my friends. So you focus on the grammar pattern using the questions and put it in your answer. Now, students, why do you think questions for everyone. You can just write your answer in the comment box. Why do you think it is important for you to carry out practice sessions among your friends, among yourselves? Can you please write your answer in the chat box, in the comment section? Why is it important for you to practice asking yourself and your friends, these questions? All right. So it is important for you to ask each other all of these questions. Practice asking yourself these questions, you and your friends, so that you can familiarize yourself with the possible questions on all these topics. Okay, we want you to appear to the assessor that you can use a range of appropriate vocabulary related to your everyday situations, related to these familiar topics. Now, the first part of the test is like a warm up session. So, if you are successful in answering the first part of the speaking test, I think this will definitely boost your confidence. So, what you need to do is ask each other all of these questions to get yourself familiar with the vocabulary. Now, in the speaking test, you shouldn't speak like a robot. So don't write down answers to the questions and then try to memorize them. That is not a good idea at all. Instead, what I would advise you to do is learn a few keywords and then speak naturally. Like you would do in your own language, like you would do when you're talking in Bahasa. Okay, so this is a conversation that I normally have with my students. Okay, I ask my students, Zach, what is your dream job? And then Zach would reply, oh, teacher, how do I say this in English? Okay, so students, the first keyword that you should learn is the name of your dream job, your hobbies, for example. So if I ask you, Zach, what is your dream job? I want to be a system analyst, for example. Okay, I want to be a software programmer, for example. Now, after that, what you can do is learn about your parents' jobs, your mother's job. For example, my mother, she's a retired teacher. You can say, teacher, my father, he's a clown trainer, for example. Okay. Other than that, what you can do is learn some nice phrases, vocabulary related to your hobbies, for example. Okay. The phrase to be keen on. Okay. To like. What is your hobby, Zach? Well, teacher, I'm keen on gardening, for example. Okay. Or if you want to talk about holidays, I ask Fatini, how about holidays? Okay, for example, in the exam, you should know how to differentiate. What are the difference between travel? What are the difference between cruise or flight? Because so that you can easily use all of these words if you are asked about holidays. For example, here I ask Sophia. Hi, Sophia. Sophia, can you please tell me what sort of holidays do you like? So how would you respond? Okay, probably Sophia would say, I'm actually not too keen on travel and I really hate flights, for example. I like cruises though, that's my favorite. So here, Sophia demonstrate that Sophia have the vocabulary related to these topics. Okay? Now, as I said before, you're not learning the whole speeches. Don't try to memorize. Instead, learn the keywords. Okay, so that you can use those keywords at the right time. Okay, now let's move on. Right. Now let's look at part two. Okay. Now let's look at part two. Wait a second. Can you see the slide for part two? I think because my computer hang. Can you see part two? Okay. Now, let's continue with part two. Now, in this part of the test, okay, the interlocutor wants to see, the assessor wants to see that students are able to sustain a long term. Okay, what does it mean? It means that you need to show that you need to demonstrate that you can be systematic when you talk. You can be clear when you talk. Okay, so we want to look at your organizations of language, of your ideas, and you need to speak for about 1 minute. Okay, so how do we prepare for this part? Okay, now for this part, what you can do is, first of all, you need to ensure that you are able to tell stories. You need to tell stories. You need to share your experiences of more a personal nature, yang lebih pribadi. So these are some ideas of topics that you can prepare yourself with. Okay, for example, talk about holiday that you had, or probably a difficult journey you had, a perfect day you've had, or perhaps a special event in your life. Okay, or maybe a time when you lost something important. But students, let's be real. Okay, let's be real. I know, the examiner know, the assessors also know that chances are some of you might never experience certain things. For example, like going on a holiday. Because it's true, some students, they've never been on a holiday because they're busy, their parents are too busy, okay? Because certain circumstances, all right? So what can you do if, let's say, the interlocutor asks you something that you've never experienced before? So we don't want you to answer. For example, if I ask you about your holiday, a holiday that you had, we don't want you to simply answer, teacher, I never go on a holiday. We don't want you to answer just that. So what can you do? Okay. Now, what you can do is, number one, you can be prepared with short descriptions about people, okay, about events, all right, about incidents, for example, okay. Why you need to prepare all these short descriptions? Because what you can do is, you can use the structures when you prepare all these short descriptions about people, about places, about events. What you can do is not memorize the whole thing, but you can use the structure. You can use the words, the adjectives when you want to answer the long term task. Okay, you learn how to form simple sentences, right? So when you are able to talk about it, talk using by forming simple sentences, it will help you in your writing as well. Because I feel if you are able to say, I am happy, okay, definitely in your writing, you're not going to write, I is happy. All right, so you are going to say, I am happy. So if what will happen is, naturally, we are going to write the way we talk. So by ensuring that whenever you talk, you use the right structure, you need to prepare from now. Okay? Now, let's look at the next slide. Moving on. Okay. Now, so what you can do here, you can learn how to describe people by talking about their physical appearance. For example, how to describe face, how to describe the eyes, how to describe mouth, thin, full mouth, how to describe nose. Okay, Shah Rukh Khan has a very arched nose. Okay, how to describe hair, black, curly, wavy, long, straight, short. Okay, next, you can also talk about people's personality. Okay, for example, here we have friendly. My sister is as friendly as a new puppy. Or for example, well, my best friend Fatima is always moody, like there's a storm brewing in her belly. For example, Sarah is so chatty, you can never get a word in. Okay, so learn how to describe people, because once you prepare from now, these are normally the kind of language, the kind of structure that you normally use to describe people, to describe personality. You will be able to apply it in your test. Okay, moving on. So far, am I being too fast? Can you still follow? Please write in the chat box. Okay. Now, let's look at a sample question. Okay, let's look at example questions. Talk about a person that you admire. Who is this person? What this person looks like? Why you admire this person? If you think it is important for people to have a good role model. So, you see, by preparing, talking about physical appearances, learning how to describe personalities, I'm sure you'll be able to answer this question easily. Okay, we know in the beginning I mentioned that for part two, you need to talk for about 1 minute. Okay, it is easy to say, all right, Jannah, hi Jannah, Jannah, you need to talk for about 1 minute. Okay, but how? Sorry. Okay, sorry. I forgot to turn on my charger. Sorry. Okay, so hi Jannah again. Back to you. Okay, Jannah. If I say, Jannah, you need to talk for about 1 minute, so it is easy to say, okay, you need to talk for about 1 minute. But the truth is, how do you visualize? How do you visualize how much talking happens, or how many words do you have to utter in 1 minute? Okay, so let's have a look at a sample answer. Okay, so this is just, for you to visualize how much talking happen in 1 minute, how many words you will need to say in 1 minute. Again, it depends on one's fluency. Okay, it depends on one's fluency. For example, let's look at this sample. Well, someone that I admire is my cousin Lisa. If I'm not mistaken, she's 5 years older than me, so she's maybe 90 now, I think. She lives in Bangi. She's very friendly, very confident. She has long, wavy brown hair and dark brown eyes. She's medium height, slim, and very fit because she's a dancer. As far as I remember, she started dancing when she was 6 years old, and she trained every day at her dance school because, she wants to be a professional dancer. But it's a very difficult job. She sometimes dances in shows, and I still remember I saw her several times. She likes to do modern dance, but I think modern dance is a bit strange. But I love watching her dance. I think Lisa is a very hardworking girl, and that is why I admire her. In my opinion, personally, I think it is important to have a good role model because role models can give us inspiration for us to do better, to be better. I am lucky to have Lisa in my life. Hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how many words you need to say in 1 minute. Again, it depends on one's fluency. Okay, next, let's look at another one. Okay, you can also learn how to describe places. Okay, how to describe places. Ancient, words such as ancient, boring, bustling, charming, contemporary. These are words that you can use to describe places. Okay, all right, next. I need to go on quickly. Okay, so this is another example of questions. Tell me about place you visited recently, where you went, who you went with, how you got there, why you enjoyed it. Okay, let's look at a sample answer. Okay, right here. When I was in Form 2, I went to Pulau Langkawi. We stayed there in a small town called Pantai Tengah. It is like a popular tourist spot in Langkawi. It is really beautiful place. I went there with my family for a 5 days holiday. We got there using many types of transportation. First, my uncle sent us to the airport by car, and then we took a 40 minutes flight, and then after that, a 20 minutes taxi ride from the airport to the hotel. I enjoyed my stay there very much. We did lots of sightseeing, but I didn't get to try any water sports activities. I spent most of my time by the beach and swimming in the sea. One thing I enjoyed the most was going to a restaurant named One Thai. They serve the best Thai cuisine in town. I hope to go there again after the COVID-19 pandemic is over. So here, you see, now look at the words. Okay, notice all the words in bold. Okay, so these are vocabulary related to the topics. So that is why I mentioned earlier that you need to familiarize yourself with these topics so that you can acquire the vocabulary needed to talk about these topics. Okay, now let's move on. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, here's another example of question. Tell me about a time when you give someone a surprise. Okay, now we have learned how we need to prepare ourselves with short descriptions about people, places, events. Okay, here now, tip number 3. You must make sure that when you talk, you use all of the prompts given. Okay, now let's look at this sample question answer. Okay, here. Now, it was my best friend's birthday. We've been good friends since Form 3. I made a really huge birthday card and I put it outside the shop in Aman Central, and I hid somewhere she couldn't find me. When she found the card, I brought her to a restaurant. My friends and I said happy birthday, and she was very surprised. I was very happy too. So when you look at the sample answer, okay, you can see that the candidate answered all of the questions in the test, okay, answered all of the questions, covered all of the prompts. But my question to you is, do you think this sample answer is a 1 minute worth of talking? What do you think? Is this 1 minute of talking? Can you write in the chat box? Okay, so please try and learn whereby I think by preparing how to talk about events, how to talk about places and people, you'll be able to learn how to expand your ideas as well. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. How do I move this? Okay, again. All right. Now next, you need to learn how to use past tense correctly. Okay, you need to learn how to use past tense correctly. All right. Now, why you need to know how to use past tense correctly? Because in your in part 2, okay, normally you need to talk about your personal experience. Okay, tell a story. So chances are what you're going to be talking are things that's already happened. So you need to ensure that you know at least how to use past tense correctly. Okay. Mm, Other than that, by knowing how to use past tense correctly, this will also help you when you want to write stories or when you want to give reviews in your writing paper. Okay, next. Right. Now, what other things that you can do is you need to learn how to make the story interesting. Okay, what can you do to make the story interesting? By using adjectives, okay, by using adverbs. Adverbs is like the ajinomoto in your story. Because if you say, I hid somewhere, she couldn't find me. So people can't really imagine in their mind how, in what manner do you hide. But if you say, I secretly hid somewhere, she couldn't find me, immediately the listener will be able to imagine, have some sort of mental image in their mind that probably you're secretly hiding perhaps under the table or behind a tree. Okay. And other than that, you can also use direct speech. For example, he asked me, can I buy you a drink? Okay. So um I want to remind you here that you don't have to make your speaking test too formal. Okay, don't make it too formal, right? Instead, try to be a bit casual, okay, as if you are telling stories to your friend by using direct speech. Okay, by using direct speech, I feel that somehow it will give a more casual atmosphere to the test. Okay, it will also indirectly help you to relax. Okay, because this is a natural way of us telling stories and experiences. For example, I was sleeping and then my mom came and just opened the door and she said, how long are you going to be sleeping? You know? So this is how we normally tell stories. So by using direct speech, I feel that you will break that tense atmosphere. You'll be more relaxed. Okay? So probably this is one of the tips that you can try and apply. Okay, moving on. Now, um, you can also use sequencing words, okay? Connect the actions from the beginning of the story until you reach the end of the story. Because why? Why you need to use sequencing words? This is because we want to make sure that it is easy for the interlocutor and it is easy for the assessor to follow your stories, okay? Now, next. This part, okay. Listen and pay attention. Okay. In part two, okay, in part two, the first is the long-term task. Okay, and the next question will be the listening candidate response. So if let's say the first speaker answered the first question, after the first speaker done talking, the interlocutor will ask the second speaker, and it is called the listening candidate response. So what you should do is you need to pay attention when your friends are talking because the listening candidate response will most likely be related to the topic that your friends are talking about. So if you listen to what the other candidates are saying, what you can do is you can use the vocabulary, okay, you can use the storylines, your ideas from your friends, and then, make it your own. Okay, so it is very important that you pay attention to what your friends are saying when your friends are talking so that you can apply, you can make use of all the vocabs that your friends have shared earlier. Okay, now, so far, do you follow? Okay, now I'm going to move on to part three. Okay, the discussion part. All right, now, before I go into details on how to answer the discussion part, can everyone here please share with me what are some of your concern, your problems when you want to carry out discussions with your friend? Can you please write in the chat box, okay, so that I can help and address your issues, okay, on what to do if you have problems in part three. Okay, because in the first two parts, you don't talk to your friend, but in part three, you have to carry out discussions with your friend. So I'm sure some of you have problems because I could see that my students have problems as well. Okay, can you please just write in the chat box what are your problems? Okay. Anyone? Any problem? Just share in the comment box what are your problem. Okay, so in part three, the first thing is you need to carry out the discussion task. Okay, both of you will be asked to speak on a topic for about 2 minutes. okay, with the central focus questions, and then you'll be given points in the mind map to help you. And then will be given a decision questions for you to focus on and for you to discuss for about 1 minute. Finally, in the third phase of part 3, you will be given a further discussion task. Okay, um, you will answer a final joint questions about the topic. All right. So here are some of the problems that my students face whenever they want to carry out discussions. Okay. So these are the common problems that my students face. Number one, they don't know how to say things in English. Teacher, I don't know how to say it in English. Okay. Number two, nobody wants to begin first. Okay. You look at me and I look at you, but nobody wants to begin. Okay. When no one wants to begin first, or nobody wants to start the conversation in the exam, we will have an awkward first 10 seconds. It will be very awkward, like quick, quick. Nobody wants to talk. Okay. Now, next question, next problem. Okay. The third problem is opportunities to speak sometimes not equal, because sometimes one speaker tend to dominate the discussion. So the other speaker does not have enough opportunity to speak. Okay, the first speaker talk about all of the points, and then it leaves second speaker with nothing. Okay. And then sometimes actually second speaker have something to say, but they are too afraid to interrupt because it is your friends, right? So you're being too kind. You are afraid to interrupt because you're afraid it will disrupt your friends' train of thoughts. So nobody wants to interrupt. Okay, you just wait for your friends to be done with his or her part. Okay. And then another problem is both speakers want to talk about the same points. You discuss the same point repeatedly, and nobody wants to elaborate on other points. Okay, so how to deal and address all of these issues? Okay, let's have a look. All right, what you can do is you need to be prepared with the familiar topics for part 3. Okay, students, actually, you can somehow predict. Okay, actually, you can somehow predict the topics which they will ask. Because by now, you must have noticed that some of the topics in your download textbook, they're actually quite familiar to the ones in your Full Plus Plus textbook. So here we have 4 themes in the textbooks, and you need to know all 4. We have themes people and culture, consumerism and financial awareness, health and environment, science and technology. Okay, so let's say if you are familiar with topics on social media or online gaming, for example, make sure that you know the vocabs related to the topic because you are already familiar. So what you need to do is make sure you have the topic so that you can express all of the wonderful ideas that you have. Okay. For example, words such as virtual or keep in touch with or socialize or product endorsements, communicate on. So these are vocabularies related to topics on social media. Okay. Let's say you are familiar with topics on traveling. Okay, traveling, for example. You need to know a vocabulary related to traveling, such as backpacking, tourist attractions, expedition. Just now we did travel, cruise, guided tour, make a reservation, book a flight. These are words, these are vocabulary related to traveling. So, how to prepare? Okay, how to prepare? You need to do lots of reading related to these topics. Why? Because when we want you to acquire the vocabulary related to these topics, so that when you want to elaborate the prompts given, when you want to express your ideas, you have adequate vocabulary to express your ideas, and you will be able to communicate your meaning clearly. Okay, so start to read now. Next, okay, what else can you do? Tip number 2, you need to be prepared with the useful phrases. All right, some of the problems that students have is they don't know how to begin, how to start. My students, they love to ask me this question. Teacher, macam mana nak mula? Macam mana nak mula? How to start? By preparing yourself with these useful phrases, at least you can start off with something. Okay, so what are the useful phrases that you need to focus on? Okay, you need to know how to start discussion, how to give opinions, how to justify your reasons, how to ask for your partner's opinions, okay, how to agree or disagree or perhaps partially agree. Okay, let's look at some of the phrases. Okay, how to start a discussion. Okay, which one shall we start with? What do you think, Bob? Bob, do you mind if I start first? Can I go first? Shall we start now? Okay. One of the features that the examiner wants to see in your discussion is that your ability to do turn taking, and that you can initiate a discussion. Okay. So you need to have all these phrases to show, to appear to the interlocutor and the assessor that you are able to initiate a discussion. Okay. Now, if let's say these are the useful phrases that you need to use, learn how to say it. Learn how to say it confidently. Learn how to say it with the correct intonation and pronunciation. For example, which one shall we start with? Which one shall we start with? Don't say, which one shall we start with? Okay? Use the right intonation. Practice. Right. Other than that, okay, you need to also give opinion. Okay, you need to also give opinion. For example, I think that, I don't think that, I feel that, I would say that, for me, personally, I think. Now, I'm sure that you have other wonderful ways to express your opinion. So these are just some of the example of useful phrases that you can use. All of these are taken from your speaking bank, from the speaking bank in your download textbook. Okay, if you have other ideas on how to express your opinions, by all means, please do so. Okay, next. You need to also learn how to justify reasons. Okay, how to justify reason, because you give your opinion and then how you give reason and further justification. For example, you can say, I say this because, or I think this is the case because, or that's my opinion, or my opinion is because. Okay, now moving on, let's look at another example. Okay, you have given your opinion, you have given your justification and reason why you said so. Next, what you need to do is you need to ask your partner's opinion. Because why? We don't want one person to dominate the whole thing. So we want to see interaction happening. Okay, we don't want you to just stop talking and then expect that the second speaker pandai lah mula. So that is not how it is supposed to be. So you need to learn how to ask your partner's opinion. For example, what do you think? Don't you agree? Do you have anything to say about that? Do you have anything to add to that? Okay. Next. All right. So let's say your friend, okay, have asked you for your opinion. Now, when you discuss with others, sometimes you fully agree with them, but at some point you may only partially agree, or perhaps you may totally disagree altogether. So, what phrases that you can use to express this different degree of agreement? Now, you may say, I completely agree with you, Or you may want to say, I think you're right about that. Okay, so these are just example. Okay, moving on. Now, I strongly encourage you to practice how to disagree and how to partially agree with your partner, especially when you practice discussion tasks in class. Okay, I say this because when you disagree, or perhaps when you only partially agree with your partner, you have to come up with a counter argument. Okay, having said that, however, one examination tip that I want to share with you here is I strongly advise you to agree with your partner's point of view during the test, even though probably you want to disagree. Because why? This is because it is usually a whole lot easier for you when you want to do so. All you have to do is just make sure that you listen to your speaking partner attentively so that you know exactly on what point you're agreeing to. Otherwise, if you say, I disagree, I have to disagree with that, you have to think immediately, almost spontaneously, form a counter argument. But if you're confident in to disagree and to provide a counter argument, by all means, you can disagree with your partner. Okay? So these are some of the sample phrases that you can use. Right. Now, tip number 3. Okay. Tip number 3, you need to learn how to delegate the task equally. Okay, learn how to delegate the task equally. So here is one speaking trick that I would like to suggest. Okay, um, divide the points equally among the speakers so that both of you, both speaker, will have equal opportunities to speak, equal opportunities to gain merit. Now, how to help you plan this? Okay, this is how I normally do with my students. All right, mark the points on the mind map clockwise as shown in the example. So we will start with speaker 1, point number 1, 12 o'clock, no crowds. And then speaker 2, 2 o'clock, time saving. And then next, speaker number 1, 4 o'clock, better prices. Okay, followed by speaker number 2, 6 o'clock, convenient. And then continue with speaker number 1, 8 o'clock, wide variety. Finally, point number 6, speaker number 2, follow the trend. Okay, right. So by doing this, it will make it easier for all of you to ensure that you know which point, both speaker will know which point they need to talk about. Okay, and by doing this, you will provide both speaker with chances to get marks. All right, so now let's look at how to carry out discussion. Okay, students, I want to share with you my technique that I use with my students. This technique is called Sora technique. In Kedah dialect, Sora means voice. Okay, by using these techniques, you will be able to voice your opinions and you'll be able to voice your ideas better. So here, S stands for start discussion, O stands for give opinion, R stands for give your reason, and A stands for ask your partner's opinion. Okay, next. In Sora 1.2, S stands for say again and agree with your partner's point of view. O stands for introduce your new point and opinion. R stands for give reason. And A stands for ask your partner's opinion. Okay, now let's look at what can you say. Okay, so Sora 1.1 is what speaker number 1 will say. Okay, speaker number 1, you're going to say, shall I start? Which one shall we start with? What do you think, Siti? And then you will give your opinion. What I think is that, in my opinion, I might be wrong. And then you give your reason. I say this because. I think this is the case because. And finally, you ask your partner's opinion. Okay? What do you think, Raj? Don't you agree? Do you have anything to add? Okay. Next. All right, next. Okay. Sora 1.2 for speaker number 2. Speaker number 2, when your partner, speaker number 1, asks you for your opinion, you're going to say, I completely agree with you. As you said, you repeat, you say again what speaker number 1 have said. All right? And then you introduce your new point and opinion. What about this one? This point. I think, then you give your opinion. After that, justify your reason. I say this because my reason for saying this is that. And finally, you ask for your partner's opinion again. Do you agree with me, Ali? So once you're done talking about the second point, ask for your partner's opinion so that your partner will continue and talk about the third point. Okay. Now let's look at a sample question. Okay, now let's look at the sample question. Right. So this is a sample question. Okay, this is going to be asked by the interlocutor. Okay, so the interlocutor will ask you this. Online shopping is gaining popularity in our country. Here are some reasons why people shop online and a question for you to discuss. First, you have some time to look at the task. So this is how your teacher will ask you. And this is what will be given to you. Okay, the mind map. Okay, let's look at the question again. Point 1 is no crowds. Point 2 for speaker number 2, time saving. Point 3 for speaker number 1, better prices. Okay, now let's look at the sample answer, sample discussion. Sorry. Now, shall I start first? Yeah, sure. I feel, speaker number 1, I feel people like to shop online because there are no crowds. I say this because if you go shopping during Hari Raya or Chinese New Year or Deepavali, there will be a lot of people. But if you shop online, there will not be a problem. What do you think? Now, speaker number 2, I completely agree with you, Ali. As you said, some people shop online because they don't like crowds. I think time saving is also a reason why people shop online. My reason for saying this is because some people are very busy with work and they don't have time to go shopping. Don't you agree with me? Speaker number 1, I was just thinking that. I agree that time saving is why people shop online. Look at how speaker 1 repeats, say again what speaker 2 said. I agree that time saving is why people shop online. But if you ask me, people also shop online because they can get better prices, because there are many sales online. Do you have anything to add? So by using Sora Sora, you will be able to ensure that you and your partner both have equal opportunities to speak during the test. And interactions happens. You talk and then you ask your partner, turn taking happens. Because these are what we want to see in discussions. Okay? Don't feel that if you talk a lot during the discussion part, then you are doing a good job. That might not be true. Okay, that is not true, because we can see that you can talk a lot in part 1 and part 2. Okay, but part 3 we want to see how you discuss with your partner. That is the main thing that we want to see in part 3. We want to see that you are able to do turn taking, initiate discussion, comes to a conclusion, responding to your partner's idea. How to respond to your partner idea. I was just thinking that. I agree. I absolutely agree with you. So that is how you respond to your partner. Okay? Now, after you've carried out, okay, the discussion, after you've carried out the discussion, you've covered all the points in the mind maps, the interlocutor will ask you another question for you to make a decision together. Let's have a look at the sample question. Okay. Here's an example. Now, Now you have about 1 minute to decide together which is the most popular reason people shop online. Okay, so just now in the discussion part, you have already covered most of the content points, okay, most of the points in the mind map. So when you want to carry out, when you want to make a decision, you don't have to cover all points because you only need to talk for about 1 minute. You need to come up with a decision in 1 minute. So what you can do is, what you should do is, do not talk about all of the prompts. So choose only one and apply SOA 2.0. Now, what is SOA 2.0? Just now is SOA 1.0 to carry out a discussion. Here, to make a decision, you use SOA 2.0. Okay, what is SOA 2.0? Okay, now in SOA 2.0, speaker number one, okay, you will use SOA 2.1. What speaker number one will do is suggest your choice. Speaker number one, you will suggest your choice. Okay, choose any one of the prompts which you think is the best and choose that and suggest that. And then you give your opinion why you said so. And then you justify your reason, give a reason why. Okay, and finally, you ask for your partner's opinion. Now, speaker number two, you will use SOA 2.2. Okay, what are you going to do in SOA 2.2? You are going to say again your partner's choice, and then you will agree with your partner's choice. Okay, say again your partner's choice and agree with your partner's choice. You don't have to introduce a new point. You don't have to suggest a new choice. No need to do that. Okay, just agree, say again and agree with your partner's choice. And then you give reason why you agree. Okay, give your opinion why, and then you give reason why you agree that, and then agree again as a conclusion. Okay, so how do you do this? Let's, okay, here is the question. Okay, so what can you say? So speaker number one, when you want to suggest your choice, you can say, why don't we choose this one? What do you think we should decide on? Okay, and then you give your opinion. What I think is that, in my opinion, and then you give your reason. I say this because my reason for saying this is that. Finally, you ask for your partner's opinion. Don't you agree? What do you think, Raj? Now, speaker number two, you will use SOA 2.2. Okay, what are you going to say? You are going to say again your partner's choice. That's a good idea, as you say. Well, that sounds great. I also think that. Okay, repeat your partner's choice. Okay, and then you give your opinion. For me, personally, I feel, and then you give reason to justify your opinion. I say this because I think this is the case because my reason for saying this is that finally you agree again as a conclusion. Why you need to agree again as a conclusion? We want to again reinstate to the interlocutor and assessor that you and your partner, both of you, can come up with a conclusion. You can come to a conclusion. You can make a decision together. Okay, so how to agree again as a conclusion? You're going to say, I guess we both agree that. I am glad we can agree that. Okay, so this is what you can say. All right, next. Now, how to make a decision, okay? How to make a decision using SOA 2.0. So this is a sample discussion to make a decision, for example, okay? Speaker one will start. Why don't we choose this one? Speaker two. I think people shop online because online shops give better prices. I say this because we can buy straight from the factory without any middleman. What do you think, Raj? Well, I totally agree with you. As you said, people like to shop online because it gives better prices. Besides, for me, I think because there are so many online stores, all of the online stores are trying to give the best prices to customers. I say this because they offer many rewards, vouchers, and discounts to attract customers with attractive prices. I'm glad I am glad that we can agree people shop online because it gives them better prices. So, this is an example of how you make a decision using Sorcerer 2.0. So far, do you follow? Are you clear with how to carry out Sorcerer 1.0 and 2.0? You can also refer to the notes in Moodle, okay? Download the notes in Moodle so that you can practice and apply the sorcerer technique with your friend. Okay, I have already given in the module the useful phrases that you can use when you want to carry out sorcerer. Okay, so far I hope that you can start and practice how to apply sorcerer starting from now, especially if you can get all of your friends in the class practice it together so that no matter who you'll be paired with, your partner know how to apply Sosoha as well. Okay, now let's move on to next one. Okay, now in the final phase of part 3, you will be given a further discussion task. Okay, and chances are the questions will be a little bit difficult, okay? Because I'm teaching week classes, so I understand that some students have difficulties to respond to the further discussion task. For example, this question, okay? Remember, these questions will be said to you, will be read to you, right? You will not be able to read the questions like this and have time to process. Okay, you just listen to this, to the questions, and then almost spontaneously you are expected to respond. For example, this question: you've been talking about why people shop online. Now let's hear your opinion on this. In what ways does advertising on social media influence people's buying behavior? Oh my goodness. It's a mouthful of words. Advertising, influence, buying behavior. What are these? Okay? Because, not saying you, if you have problems, I'm having problems trying to understand the question as well. But for this part of the test, you are expected to respond almost spontaneously. So, how do you buy time? Because you are not going to be given time to prepare. How do you buy time? What you can do is, Hmm. Well, I've never really thought about that, but that's a good question. In fact, I think that's an interesting question. Oh, let me think. Well, maybe celebrities. I don't know whether my answers make sense or not. The only thing that comes from me that I can think of is celebrity, but I buy time. I say, well, I never really thought about that. That's a good question. In fact, that's an interesting question. Um, Celebrity, I think. Okay, so if you don't know how to answer, you still can appear as if you are thinking and trying hard to answer. Interlocutor and assessor definitely would not like candidate who say, "I don't know, teacher. I don't understand, teacher. I don't know, teacher." You see, I don't know too, but I say, I've never really thought about that. That's an interesting question. In fact, that's a good question. Let me think. Celebrity, I think. Okay. So this is a trick that you can do if, let's say, you have problem trying to understand or respond to the question. Okay. Now, if let's say you are able to do, okay, you are able to do everything that I've shared with you, I think by right you should get at least band score 3 for grammar. because you were able to communicate with reasonable accuracy. You can show good degree of control of simple grammatical structures, and you try to attempt some complex grammatical structures, such as for me, I think, things like that. You can form longer sentences. Why? Because you use all of these useful phrases. You link them together by using cohesive devices. You have some sort of a coherence, because why? When you use soa, first, you start a discussion, you give your opinion, you justify a reason, you ask for your partner's opinion. There's some sort of a structure there, okay? And for vocabulary, okay? For vocabulary, you can use a range of appropriate vocabulary to talk about everyday situations and familiar topics. You can convey relevant meaning. Probably you may have errors in your vocab choice, but it's okay. You can still get band 3, okay? And um, for communicative competence, you are able to express yourself clearly, although there is some hesitation. Okay, we have, I think, okay, you can initiate. Shall I start first? You can maintain. What do you think? You can develop and close a conversation here with a little difficulty. But I think if you practice from now, you learn how to apply a sort of technique starting from today, I think you will not have problem to close a conversation. Remember how you agree again as a conclusion? Well, I'm glad we can both agree that so you can close a conversation. That is what we want to see. You can ask for clarification. What do you think? Do you have anything to add? Because you want to move the discussion forward. So you see, students, there's no reason why you cannot score your speaking test. These are some strategies to help you to gain merits and to score as many marks possible for your speaking test. Because if you notice, if you do some calculation, go and ask your teacher, for every 1 mark that you get in your speaking test will contribute to 1% of the total 25%. Okay? So 1% is a lot. 1% is a lot. And I strongly encourage you, please start and practice from now. Speak in English, practice with your partner, or probably if you don't have friends who want to talk to you, what you can do is record yourself. Record yourself so that you can hear, you can see whether you're using the right pronunciation, whether you're using the right intonation, whether you're using the right words or vocabs. Okay, so you need to start and practice from now. Again, we have come to the end. Thank you very much, IMPAK, for having me. Thank you very much, students, okay, for being wonderful audience. I truly hope that all of you have learned something during this session. I truly hope that my strategy and tips and tricks that I've shared will help you to better prepare yourself for your speaking test. Okay, so all the best to you. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye bye. Take care.